And good evening, LBE community, family, friends, wherever you are, all over uh, the planet. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're asking you to get comfy, and we're here with some regular uh, visitors to the studio, the LBE studio. And this evening, the ladies, the women wanted to come together and have some real talk about uplifting and upholding the importance of community. And sometimes that can be very difficult. And I am so pleased to have uh, these wonderful soul goddesses in the studio this evening. And I just want us to go right into, I think we may hold some different thoughts or values or about what is uplifting and upholding the community, and what community are we talking or speaking of this evening. Miss Deb, do you want to get us started with that? What's your idea or your thoughts on uplifting and upholding community?
Oh, okay. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see all of you again. Let's see, my thoughts or my definition of uplifting or upholding community is just really, I take the attitude about the village, that it takes, a whole village to do anything, raise a kid, be a community, whatever. And so my attitude about uplifting community is to try and be supportive and to be there for whoever's in that community, and to try and be a resource, and make, life is difficult anyway, but if I can do something to make life a little easier, and if we all can do something to make life a little easier for others, especially those of us who are in communities like I'm in Flagstaff.
Right.
So, just being there to be supportive and uplifting people, and trying to keep them engaged.
Absolutely. Sister Dr. Treya, what does that mean to you, uplifting and upholding the importance of community?
Um, One, I think it's about decolonization, quite honestly. I think that we have been convinced, right, by a capitalistic system that we can do this thing on our own. And the reality of it is I cannot. And so to uphold and uplift community is not simply just about being around people, but it's also understanding that I'm at my best self when I am partnered, when I am connected with other people. And by that same connection, I'm also uplifting and holding other people accountable to their highest selves as well. So I think that's the short of it. And I didn't mean to jump off into capitalism so soon, but we're seeing a lot of it now where it's like, you can make it, you do it. And that's just simply not reality. And it's definitely not healthy when we think about rest as a practice.
Mm-hmm.
That only happens in community with other people, when you don't have to carry it all by yourself, when we're not falling into tropes and stereotypes, specifically of Black women.
Thank you for that. Uh, Dr. Tam, welcome.
Good evening.
What are you doing to uplift and uphold community, and what does that mean to you?
I think community means to me a sense of belonging, a sense of pride. It's a sense of supporting each other. Typically, we as Black people have a crab in the basket mentality, meaning that we are not supportive of each other. When you see someone looking nice, you compliment them. But quite often, that does not happen. And so I think that when we see each other, we kings and queens, we should support one another. We should give us our accolades. We should make sure that we are giving us our just due, giving us our respect, because quite often, collectively, to piggyback off of what Dr. Allen said, we have that colonization mentality, crab in the basket mentality. We're bringing each other down instead of lifting and upholding each other up. And quite often we use the church as our support systems. And so again, that also brings community together and in a cohesive manner. We also have the Divine Nine. That is also another cohesive organizations that uplift and support the community, because those organizations give back. Those organizations do community service. They do a lot of charity work to support philanthropic organizations. So I think that we as Black folks, brown folks, need to come together to support one another, and move forward and not move backwards. Thank you.
Sister Ramona, what say you? How are we holding up and uplifting community, and what should we be doing?
Well, I think for us as a culture of people, one of the things that I appreciate when I'm in a Black space is the validation of who I am, the essence of who I am, and like Dr. Moore said, a sense of belonging. You can be invited to a place, but are you welcomed there? So when we talk about being in, later on we'll get into the colonization of community, but for me it really is, after you've navigated predominantly white world and where that sense of value is devalued, you have to refresh. You have to revive yourself in a way. And I for me, it's that sense of belonging, and we do have to create those spaces for us, even in white spaces, our sister circles or our Black Girl Magic groups, and it's not to dehumanize anyone else, but it is to value and identify ourselves as equally important. Reminding each other of wellness, because sometimes we don't. We have to give ourselves a break. And so I think that we have to continue to invent places in those spaces where we can be validated. And that's where I get the support from. And then also for those non people like us, not people of color. What I do for myself is I look for those who I know. I say, really, these individuals not necessarily are like-minded, but they value human community. They don't have that unwritten whites only, or that one, that unwritten place. They really truly welcome you in, and so that's what I think. I always, I'll say this, I can't say this enough, but that is one of the expectations that I have in those predominantly white spaces, to be more welcoming, to be more communal. As Dr. Allen was talking about this me and mine, to be more communal, to be able to see an individual. And so, yeah, I think that's where I land on that whole validation of anyone that's in that space, that they do belong there.
Absolutely. There was a reason, little sister Amber, that I saved you for last, because you're the youngest. And she's like, I'm a baby, but look at my baby here. But as you are becoming, you're still becoming the woman that, and we all at stages in our lives, we are all still becoming. So it's not really about age. But as you are still maturing and still discovering who Amber is, what are you discovering? Where are you about uplifting and upholding community?
First of all, I see community as like my safety network right now, because I didn't have one for so long. And so I see it as just, when I am at my lowest, I have people to go to help lift me up, to help get me through to the next day if I need it. And I would say it's the mentorship, just reaching out to those women who, like the women on this panel who have so much to give back. And I have so much to learn from, like seeking those people out to help, to guide me through, raising my own little girls and trying to navigate this world that can be so incredibly complicated. And I would say that part of that is just trying to be active. So community is not a passive thing, right? Like you have to show up. You can't just, sit on the pew and then, leave. You have to stick around. You have to put in your time. You have to then take that, power and strength that you've gotten from your community and turn around and give it to somebody else who might not have it, or who might also be struggling, and, branching out to then, make that space bigger, because it's so nice to have a group of people that you can let your guard down in front of, because we have it up so often, we have it up so much, and it's exhausting. It's so incredibly exhausting, but walk into a room with, your tribe, your group of people, your community, and to let it down and to just, share those shared experiences and celebrate the good, try and, get over the bad. So I find I could not do this without my community. I could not be who I am. And I've had so many just self-discovery moments because of the people that I have surrounding me. And I'm so incredibly thankful. Like community, I've gotten so much out of community. And so I'm trying to turn around and do the same thing if there's somebody younger or less fortunate, because I've spent a lot of time very lonely when I first moved up here. I'm also in Flagstaff, and it's incredibly difficult to, it's very hard to find, especially in, we have such a small population here in Flagstaff. It's hard to find it sometimes. Once you find it, it is worth fighting for, and it's worth growing. And so that's where I'm at right now. It's just, I'm so excited to have my community and to turn around and try and help grow it and help find those people who've slipped through the cracks, because, we all need that safe space.
Absolutely. You shared a lot of wisdom there, young sister, and I like that. One thing, like you said a lot of things, but one thing, if you do not mind, that I want to pull out from what you said. You mentioned we as women of color having to put our guard up. And that is why we find ourselves needing to be at this kitchen table, at the real kitchen table. We've gathered at Miss Deb's home around her beautiful dining room table, or if we just find ourselves just sitting around on the porch or in the living room or the den. Why is it that we find ourselves having to put our guard up and then come into these sacred spaces to just exhale? And I want to ask Sister Dr. Treya to start us off with some thoughts on that. What is this guard that we put up? Why do we have to put it up? And how do we, or at what point do we find ourselves having to be in this space to have these talks?
Goodness, that is a loaded question, right? The first one who jumped into my head was Njaki Shonge, for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow was enough, right? Like all of, I think, and I'm going to specifically speak about Black women. Black women have been the mules of the modern world. We've had to create things. We have been loved for our parts and not necessarily the wholeness of who we are. I can recall being on a job where someone wanted my labor, but did not want my critique, when I was like, yo, this is not appropriate. And what oftentimes happens in those spaces where there is only, where I may be the only one, or where I may have another person who looks like me, but has been convinced and conditioned that I am their competition because there can only be one. It becomes a very toxic environment. And after a while, you get tired of having to fight to prove that I'm only here to do my job. I know for me, being in these situations, what it has caused me to do is to survey the land before I go in. That gets exhausting to do on a day-to-day basis. Some of my undergrad students, what they do is when they go into, one of the strategies that we use is we say, oh, you're going into computer science and you're going into neuroscience. I know that you both have to take Math 129. So let's put you in the same class together so that we make sure that you have a community. We do this same thing, or I do this same thing going into any space that I may have to present in, that I have to work in. I am looking for someone else. And you can almost find them every single time because we lock eyes and it's automatically communicated, sis, I got you.
Yep.
Right? It becomes extremely tiring every single day to have to prove that you're not a threat, right? There's an article that says that Black women go from pet to threat really quick. So we want you for your parts. We want you for your labor. We want you for your amazingness, but please don't have an opinion that bucks up against the status quo. Please don't have an opinion. And I see a lot of people shaking their heads in this call. Please don't have an opinion that challenges what I believe to be a great idea. So we get hired for diversity initiatives, but really what we're being asked to do is to be a colored face that's silent. Well, that's like the antithesis of the excellence that we bring into a situation, or whatever that situation is, whether it's employment, whether it's volunteer service, whether it's even PTA. And so we learn really quickly, survey the land. Is there a return on investment for me here in this space? Is there community here? Do I belong here? And I think all of these things on a daily, sometimes moment to moment, like if you're having to navigate these things moment to moment, that gets very exhausting, right? So we enter into the workforce, we enter into a space, a place, a position, and then we have to constantly navigate, is it safe? Is it safe to talk? Is it safe to give my opinion? Is it safe to be smart? Is it safe to have an opinion? Not an opinion, but like state facts in here and it's relevant. Now, I don't want to paint the picture that it's always this way, but the majority of my professional life, it has been this way, right? And all because someone else had issues or someone else didn't have knowledge of themselves. And so automatically I become the threat. Over time though, right? My experience with this is not unique. It's specific because I live in a certain place, but it's not unique. So I can ask everyone on here, like, tell me your moment where you're like, oh, this is not safe. Tell me the time where you walked in and you've been searching for community, or what I call micro spaces. That moment when I see somebody across the room and I lock eyes and I say, sis, I'm struggling. And they're like, don't worry, I got you. Or you become the anchor for someone else. That is the necessity of community, right? Because a lot of these spaces that we're talking about historically were not created for us at all. And we are not allowed the full range of our emotions without it, potentially costing us the ability to feed our families, to stay employed, to pay our mortgages. And so that navigation becomes tiring. And it's not new, but it's very much rooted in historic happenings and oppression, capitalism, all these other wonderful things, but mainly because people just don't know. They don't know that we are human.
That's deep. So, Miss Deb, do you agree with what Sister Dr. Treya just shared with us?
Yes, you know what? I think she's right on. And you put it so, just right there, so succinct. Well, can't talk this evening. what I want to do is throw something out there for us to think about and consider. And let me just tell you a real brief little story. I've been in higher ed probably since I was 28, and I'm 66 now. That's a lot of years. And what I learned during that time is that I needed to be Esther. If I was going to survive, I needed to be Esther. I needed to know that the person that I serve had a plan for my life. And that plan was not for harm, it was for good. So, everybody may not have that same faith base. And for whatever reason, growing up, made my own decision, found that relationship. And that gets me through a lot of stuff. And sometimes I say, why me? Why do I have to? And then I stop and I said, nope, you can't go there. Because if you go there, it's going to be self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
So why not you?
Mm-hmm.
Why not you? And so, it does get frustrating, and it's hard to go into those spaces. And as a single parent raising a son, every time I walked into a meeting and played Esther, I was taking a chance because I've worked in higher ed all my life on year-to-year contracts. And thank God I was never, fired or not, a contract hadn't been renewed. But I was blessed. And so I try and give that back to other people. I try and help, especially young women, find their Esther, find who they are and know that they're going to be okay. Because sometimes people get in our heads and they want to make us think that we're not going to be okay, that nobody's ever going to hire us ever again if we do A, B, and C. And you can't let them take up space in your head, short of taking your life, everything else is negotiable.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of look at it. But you're absolutely right, Dr. Allen, you're so right that it is hard, and it is every day to get up and walk into that space and to be in that uncomfortable space is hard. And then to try and lock eyes with someone who says, I got you. Yep. And so I want to always be that person in that room that says, I got you.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of for me. So.
Sister Ramona, something resonated with you that Miss Deb said, and you did the finger snap. What that's what something that's like the spirit hit you. Yeah. What was that? Share what was that? What was it that she said, and just speak on it.
Well, I mean, you just have that whole why not me, that whole Esther mentality you have to have. And I will say, especially since we have one of our young professionals on here and just mentoring and helping her get through, I know that I struggled with that in the beginning. So, I mean, that was really real. I can't be me. I don't want to be me. It's too hard to be me in this space. So let me just be glad to be here versus being here. Mm-hmm. But the more that you navigate that space and you are there trying to be seen, you're trying to be more than just there. You find yourself there, but being invisible. And then you just realize, I got to change this for future generations. I got to change this because of the history of us trying to be in these spaces. I've got to stop shifting and be the queen that I'm supposed to be in this space so that others will respect this and be comfortable with it. And if they can't respect it and be comfortable with it, then they're the ones in the wrong space. Exactly. They're the ones that have to find a sense of belonging. And so, the older I got, I found this out, and I'm hoping that younger professionals of color, and particularly our Black brothers and sisters, will find that quicker.
Absolutely.
So many of us that are navigating white spaces, we feel that it's a membership only and we're just here temporarily, because we know sometimes we're in the meeting after the meeting that went on last night, or at church or somewhere else, and so we're in the meeting after the meeting. And so I find myself just going and navigating those spaces and taking up my space and getting the respect that I deserve in those spaces. But I got to tell you, that's even hard to do. I'm not trying to tell y'all that that's an easy thing to do, you know, because you still want to have that fight or flight. So you're trying to balance those two things. But that is why when I talked about those sister circles and those Black girl magic groups, and as Dr. Moore said, those Divine Nine groups and Links and Jack and Jill and all of that, those are so important. They're so important to us because the validation is so important to me. You have got to respect my culture. And I need you. I'm not going to wear this on my sleeve, but I do need you to understand that there are some historic perspectives and issues that happened that created this members only kind of environment,
Right.
that we're breaking through.
Absolutely.
Yes, Sister Harris, you did. Yeah, I definitely felt that.
Yeah.
Miss Curtis, can I just add a little bit to what you were saying? Because I think you said something really, really key here. Just because my degree is in learning science, there's a difference between something being hard and something being challenging. And I do want to say that before we leave, that Black women meet this challenge every day, right? We learn how to navigate these systems in sister circles, in Black women who have been in the academy longer than I have, Black women who have been eating across somebody's table, right? Learning how to no, don't say it this way, say it this way. And while it is hard, we have been groomed to meet this challenge. We have been I cannot, and I can't be on here without like my mentors going, what? We talked about this. Don't be out here selling a bill of goods like it's impossible. It is definitely not possible. So I want to clarify that when we say it is hard, it's sometimes mentally taxing. It is sometimes emotionally just like, say nothing to me for a while. We sometimes have to take a break just to gather and collect ourselves. And right. So when I think about what you're saying, I also think about Toni Morrison, who says she is a friend of mine. She gathered me, the pieces I am, and put them back together again. It is good to have a friend who is a friend of your mind. And that is the necessity of community. Now, we know that she's talking about a character, but I think Toni Morrison is very much like the patron saint of all Black women, right? When she says like this idea of being in community and having someone who can gather the pieces of you and put them back and give them to you in the correct order, that is the necessity of having community in PWIs or predominantly white institutions or predominantly white spaces where you will always, or where someone is always working to misunderstand you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Little sister, in your growing and your becoming, are you already having these experiences? You know, we do the lived Black experience we do this project or come in this live stream to inform and educate and enlighten others. And so as you are becoming, are you finding that you are having these experiences already? You're a young mother, a young professional. Are you finding that you are already having to take the self-inventory before going to your work meetings, the team meetings? Can you speak on that?
Oh, absolutely. And especially being, because I'm in biological sciences right now, it's, I come between, people from the African diaspora very rarely. And so it's very much still a boys' game in some instances. There's been so many uncomfortable moments trying to navigate, kind of what turns out to be a, middle-aged white men's boys club. And so I would agree, it's incredibly taxing, it's incredibly hard, but also, and especially in this past year, like what Ms. Curtis has said is just like really coming into myself and owning my space, walking into the building and being like, you know what, I do a really great job. And they are, they're lucky to have me, and I'm going to be me. I'm not going to keep putting on these masks to try and, keep somebody happy, because it's so mentally draining to try and make myself smaller than I really am. And so I don't want to do that anymore. It's, it usually leads to depression. Like I always end up feeling depressed because I'm not being my true authentic self, and I shouldn't have to compromise my mental health and who I am for the job, right? Because they get into our heads and they tell us, you're not going to succeed unless you do A or like X, Y, and Z. And that's not true. And I don't want to make that, because I have 2 little girls, like I'm not going to be small, and I don't want them to model my behavior, because they deserve so much more. And so it's definitely challenging, especially as I look to kind of further my career in this field with so few mentors and few examples. But I'm gonna blaze ahead with my community behind me, because you know what, I'm going to be going and talking to like Miss Deb. I need to vent. Can you help me with like this situation? I don't know what to do. And just draw on that strength and try to move forward, and make people realize that I am a person and I am capable. I'm just as capable as anybody else that you could hire, even more so. So just owning myself and knowing who I am and being confident in those spaces, I think has been again, painful at times, but it's been so incredibly rewarding. And I'm excited to see where it goes, because there's been so many Black women who have come before me who have, helped break the ceiling and have helped, I have a path to follow. And I'm so thankful for that. I don't have to do it alone. Because like Dr. Allen said, we have it in our heads that, all it is pulling myself up by my bootstraps. If I work hard enough, and if I attend church enough, if I pray enough, the blessings will rain down. But you know what? We can't do this in a vacuum. Like I don't think you can truly become who you are, really, really be yourself without those people next to you, helping you up.
Absolutely. Dr. Tam, in my knowing you are very passionate about your work and how your work touches the world. And if it doesn't, it should, when we think about healthcare and zero in on dental healthcare. And I consider your service to the university, to your department, and I always tell you, what you're doing. Oh, and we lost her. She'll come back. Let me ask what I'm hearing from each of you, and this is what I wanted to ask Dr. Tam, but I'll just put it out to all of you. I think she's coming back in. None of us are crybabies, not even little sister Amber here. I'm already, she's facing these challenges, and so Dr. Tam is back. None of us are crybabies, so we're not here crying like we get mistreated.
Mama told us there'd be days like this.
Yeah, we're not crying like, oh, they were picking on me at work and they didn't let me participate. So I bless each and every one of you here for the strength that you take into your workspaces. So Dr. Tam, I want you to lead off on this. You know, we're talking about, our day begins, you kind of, how do you start your day? What's the work day like for you, emotionally, spiritually? You know, because you're definitely a woman of great strength. And, you know, I mentioned, I don't know if you caught it, I'm saying we're not crybabies, you know, not weak in any sense. We take this on. I think I want us to share how do we take this on? What do we do? How do we start the day?
So, can you guys hear me?
Oh no. Sister Ramona, you want to get us started on that? How do we start the day off?
Well, I tell you, I have to have context as to why I'm having to keep going and keep doing this. And sometimes it is about me as a Black woman. Sometimes it's about those that I'm mentoring within the culture. And sometimes it's about those who have spoken into my life that they kept going so that I could keep going. And so, and I even reach out to them. But when I, for me, I look at this as a calling to continue. You know, there were people who died so I could be in these spaces. And so it is a calling to me. So what does that look like for me and for my generation to now give back for the generation coming behind me? So, you know, no one has burned a cross in my yard. No one has lynched me, you know, me or my immediate family or anything like that. So I have a responsibility to stand firm, to be proud in those spaces. Now, I'm not going to tell you that it is difficult, because as we're talking about navigating predominantly white spaces, as an African American who also, being a professional, being in the upper middle class, there's also a struggle with navigating our Black spaces too. So you have to seek first to understand, then to be understood. So dealing with this cultural scanning that you're doing, trying to find validation within these spaces to understand those others who may think differently of you, you know. And so, and there is going to be some cultural exemptions within the culture and outside the culture by those people who are trying to figure out, who is she? You know,
Right,
you know, on both sides, they're trying to figure out, who is she? And
right.
so knowing that is easy for me to validate, because I know from where we've come, and I know uh, who's brought me here and where I have to get others. So I can't face those intimidations. So I have to do that culturally scanning, because
Yeah.
racial battle fatigue is very real when you're navigating, especially when you're doing community engagement.
Mhm.
It is very real, and you're being a representative of a predominantly white institution,
Right.
and then you're navigating Black spaces. So it is very tough,
Yep.
and especially for African American females, y'all, we need each other. When we
Absolutely.
need each other when we're validating those spaces, because I want to come into the space and I want to validate you, no matter what your socioeconomic or education level or what you look like or your health wise. I want to validate you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I understand why sometimes people don't understand who I am, particularly in a Black space. I could be the man with the tan, and we've been there before. You know, what is this? What they say? All my skin color and my kin or skin, just because I'll forget that. But anyway, so it is so taxing. So that is why validation is so important to me, that I don't let my emotional bank account get down to zero. My,
Yeah.
I'll say, cultural emotional bank account get down to zero. One of the things that's important for us when we're in community, and then I'll let it go for right now. But one of the things that we have to do as women of color, as people of color, as Black women, and as Black men, we have got to have a healthy racial identity. What does that look like for you when you're navigating those spaces, and particularly those predominantly white spaces? What does that look like to you? Because we do not want to ever feel less than when we're navigating those spaces.
Yeah.
So that is something when we talk about mental health that we really need to think about. Our kids are committing suicide now, y'all.
I'm telling you.
10 years old, 11 years old. We have got to deal with the healthy racial identity when we talk about that sense of community and finding validation. And so it is so important. I've done a couple of workshops on why African American women don't report abuse. You know, some of this is fear of the way the police see us. You know, we don't feel like the community is behind us. When we get there, they're seeing the angry Black woman versus the perpetrator who's violating us. And so, you know, sometimes we don't, or we take it for our culture. You know, we take it for our culture. Like, you don't want to see him get in trouble. You know, the problems with the African American male and all of this, and there's enough of us locked up already. So we're just suffering in silence. We're just suffering in silence when we're trying to find our community. We're trying to find our community. And so I was so glad that my meeting was moved to Friday so that I could be here to talk about navigating those spaces in an emotionally healthy way, because that is huge. We got the credentials.
Yeah.
We have all of that. But how do we feel about ourselves in those spaces?
I really like what you're saying. And that's why I wanted to ask Dr. Tam to speak on. So when we're preparing ourselves to go into these spaces, that's, you know, so if Dr. Tam, if you don't mind sharing, you know, how do you prepare yourself to go into these spaces that Sister Ramona is talking of?
Well, I work in these spaces every day.
Right.
I am a dental hygienist by trade, and dental hygiene is 95% white female dominated. When I came into the profession, it's now about 85%. So it's been good 30 years, and the demographics have changed minimally. That being said, I start my day in prayer every day, especially when I come into NAU, because like Dr. Allen said, you have people who will test you, who will try you, who will use what you say against you. And so I have 64 students, about 60% of whom are white. And I have about 10 faculty, and about 80% of them are white. And so I have to say a prayer every day. I listen to gospel music every morning before I walk into this building, because I need the cloak of Job, Jesus, Moses, all of them to protect and shield me from the forces of evil. I think I'm frozen, but can you still hear me?
Yep. Nope. You're good.
So that being said, if I don't start my day in prayer, things don't go right. Something's always going to go wrong. And then I say a prayer, and then I also listen to gospel music. And I have this one prayer that I say every day. And that prayer is, Lord, set watch upon my lips, my tongue control today. Help me to guide each thought and navigate all the words that I say. So that being said, Ms. Deb is a testament to her being my rock, because my mouth has gotten me into a lot of trouble here at NAU. Quite a bit of trouble. However, with Ms. Deb and the Lord on my side, and of course my mother prays for me daily up on the mountain, that has gotten me through. And to echo what Dr. Curtis said and Dr. Allen said, you do have people who will test you and will challenge you because you come with new ideas. You come with the better idea than they had. And all of a sudden, that's a problem. And they try to knock you down. They try to get you fired. They try to slander your name. I've been slandered in written word and in verbal word. But again, with Ms. Deb helping me to navigate these waters, I have managed to sustain myself like Maya Angelou, like dust, I still rise.
That's
And
it.
I rise and I rise and I rise. I don't let what the negative things that faculty say, students say, or staff say about me get to me, because I know my worth. Like Dr. Curtis said, I know my worth. You may not know it, you may not value it, but I know it. And so that being said, I go into that mindset every day with, okay, I know I got this because I'm running a department with 64 students and I've been doing this for 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been throwing stones at me left and right. But I rise. I have not faltered. Okay. I've been shaking a little bit. Ms. Deb knows that, but I've weathered the storm, you know,
Absolutely.
like one of my favorite singers, Yolanda Adams, you know, you weather the storm, you know,
Yep.
still I rise, you know,
Yep.
and so what is one of the main things. And so as I navigate at this PWI, I've also tried to bring diversity. Now I've made some major changes within the curricula and also within the actual face of dental hygiene in this department. I've changed the brochures to reflect more brown folks.
Mm-hmm.
There, all of the brochures had white people on it. How can you recruit diverse students when you don't have the recruitment tools? Visual diversity, people need to see diversity. And so
exactly.
We have some faculty here who say, oh, well, you know, diversity is LGBTQIA. And I say, well, when I look at you, you look like a white person to me. I can't tell that you're LGBTQIA. You look at me, you know, I'm Black. So help me understand. And I don't have any issue with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm all for that. But when you're talking about recruiting underrepresented professionals into dental hygiene, they need to see someone who looks like them.
Exactly.
And I look like them. So therefore we have an increase. We've increased our diversity numbers from 22% in 2013 when I arrived here to 50% in 2020. So my tactics, my tools have worked. Yep. However, you have those people who say, oh, well, you know, that's not important. Well, it is important because our students treat diverse patients. We have Native American population, Hispanic, as well as African American. So they need to learn cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness, cultural humility, and cultural understanding in order to treat these patients. And so I try to reflect that. I try to express that. I try to ensure that the students understand that this is a part of being a hygienist. You can't just walk in the door, walk out, and go and work in a world where there's no folks but white people you're going to be treating. I think Black folks in every city, every state in this United States of America and abroad. So they need to understand that. So I want to bring it back to community. Community to me is also an action word. It's not just a noun, it's an action, because we're talking about being support systems for each other. That's community, right? Actively engaging and going to church services, actively engaging and coming to Ms. Deb crying because something happened to me here at the job. That is a sense of community. When she gives me relief, to me, that is community. So community is not just a noun, it's also an action verb.
Exactly.
I'm frozen, but you guys can hear me. Thank you.
Absolutely. And you brought the word, sister. Thank you for that. And before I go any further, I want to we honor our elders, and when I say elder, I'm not saying that Miss Deb is old. She is not, but she is wise and she is experienced. And I always like to refer to her as our community chiefess because she is, if any of, and I think a few of us on this screen have made our sojourn to the mother continent, and we know that it is the chiefess in the village that we take all of our problems to and all of our whatever difficulties, good things, bad things, all of it, we take it to the chiefess or the chief in the community. And that is what Miss Deb has been for us. And you know, in this African culture, we age. There's no such thing as old or young. As a matter of fact, we even refer to Sister Amber, the young one, as a junior elder, because she came here with some wisdom that we can gain from her. So it's not the age that we're speaking of. And so what I'm getting, so far, we have to show up. What I'm hearing from you, first we have to know our worth. So we get up in the day, and this is what I'm focusing on. I want us to share. I want the people to hear, how does a Black woman start her day to go out and face these challenges that Dr. Treya, that all of you have put out there for us. So we have to first know our worth. Then we as we're getting dressed, we may get dressed and make that time to be in prayer. And as we're getting dressed, we've prayed. We may listen to some spiritually uplifting music to center our spirits, our souls. Miss Deb, what do we do after that?
Oh, okay. So we get our heads kind of straight and decide we're going to go out and face this world. What do we do after that? So tell me again.
So
So
we wake up, and we know our worth. We step into, we remind ourselves of who we are, what our purpose is what Sister Ramona led us through, knowing who we are. And so we stand in that. We get dressed, even our clothing, our jewelry, our hairstyles depict who our knowledge of who we are, and our experience, and the power that we have and we walk in. Then we have prayer. And then we listen to spiritual and uplifting music. Do we leave and go out the door after that, or is there some more that we do before we step into these spaces?
Well, I think you really did cover it, you know, and I guess the only thing that I would add is that, you know, you also remember or remind yourself of whose you are. At least I do. I remind myself of whose I am. I'm not sure if that's grammatically correct or not, but that's what I do. And so, you know, I think you put it there. You put it all in order. But let me just say this. First of all, thank you all so much for. I don't know. I feel so humbled when I hear you all talk about me like that in terms of chiefess or elder or whatever. And I really don't think of myself, you know, that way. But it warms my heart, and it makes me feel good to know that I'm making a difference. You know, that my life matters, and that what I've done here in this space and in other space, that it has helped someone along the way. That while I'm building this bridge, I may not have to go back across it because I'm done. But that young person that's coming after me, that's going to be a chasm that he or she is going to have to cross. And so I got to build that bridge for them. And so all of those things make me feel really, you know, humbled, and that maybe I'm fulfilling my mission or my purpose or whatever. And it is, you know, I'll just say also that, you know, it's hard sometimes to get up every morning and to think about the people in your community and who's going to need help today and who might need help tomorrow. And how do you handle this person, and how do you handle that person, and how do you be all that you can be to the people that need you. For me, sometimes that does get emotionally draining. But when I start to waver, I just go back to why I do what I do and why I'm here, because there's a purpose for my life.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I do when I get up in the morning and get ready to go out, is just remind myself of what that purpose is. And there's no feather in my cap. It's not patting myself on the back. This is not for the faint of heart. If you're you cannot do this.
Absolutely not.
You gotta put your big girl panties on every day.
Every day. And I'm not ashamed to say I already wear big girl panties, so I have to put on the extra. And
because folks will make you. They will really get to you, and so you have to have a little humor.
That helps.
Can't take everything too seriously. You need to laugh. Sometimes in the moment it ain't funny, but after it's over, you can find the humor in it, because you need to do that, because it keeps you sane. But so that's just that. I think Dr. Tam put it all, and you came back and just covered it again. I don't know what else to add to that.
No, you did. So it takes some humor. You have to laugh. That's what keeps the spirit intact. It actually is healing to laugh, and so that's something else that we have to do. Sister Dr. Treya, when we find ourselves having to go into these spaces of community, what exactly are we looking for? What's our prayer as we're going into these spaces? When the door opens into the space, what exactly are we opening or looking to find when that door is opened?
So I think that before we even go into community, we have to understand what it is, right? And how the easiest way to explain this is when people have been church hurt. They've experienced some kind of trauma around church, and no church at the slightest inkling of this may hurt, or I have to be vulnerable in this place, we draw back, and then we fall back on our trauma surrounding church hurt or community hurt, right? So it's understanding that community cannot be made without my active participation. And me wanting to be in community also means that I need to check myself and check my own stuff, but also understand that I have a responsibility to show up and participate. Because if I'm always standing on the outside thinking, Amber looks just like Denitra, and Denitra did this to me, nah, this ain't for me, right? We have a responsibility to participate in community as well. And what that means is that not only am I expecting people to be vulnerable and healing and corrective, right? Because sometimes community is about, yo, Treya, that was trash. You need to go back and apologize for that. From people who love me enough not to allow me to hit a brick wall. It also means I have to actively participate. So even though we are in community right now, I have just as much responsibility for Amber that I do to Miss Harris, Miss Curtis, Dr. Tam. It is about our responsibility and acknowledging that we also have a responsibility. Going into community can be frightening for people who are constantly having to protect themselves, right? Who have racial battle fatigue, who have PTSD from dealing with humans, because not every human is healed, whole, and ready to be positive and contribute to relationships in ways that are not toxic. It means that I have to, one, weigh the hearts and not the actions, because sometimes those actions, I'm not saying let people run over you. What I'm saying is that sometimes me being snappy towards you, me being distant, means that I'm dealing with my own stuff. Mm-hmm. But community, when I'm walking into it, I am expecting love, right? And that's a concept that we don't really it's not professional, right? We're not taught to operate out of the indices of love. We are not taught to show love. We're taught to be professional, whatever that may mean. I guarantee you it doesn't come from our community. So when we're walking in, I'm looking for healing spaces. I'm looking for corrective spaces. I'm looking for spaces that will allow me and that will allow me, encourage me, and chastise me when I am not being my full self. Yeah. Because we always have to wear a mask, always, to protect, to make sure that we're not running into things. So I think that's one thing. Is one, before we even enter, is understanding that there is a social contract. By me saying I want to be in community with y'all, it automatically makes me responsible for everyone that I'm in community with. And at the same time, it makes me responsible for dealing with my own stuff so that I'm not projecting that into community. And recreating the spaces that I say are harmful outside, right? But it also requires me to mature. While I didn't know Miss Deb, I work with people who have worked with Miss Deb, right? And in her absence, it is my job to carry on the legacy of Miss Deb in the embodiment of a Dr. Allen.
Yep.
So when I am showing up to teach, when I am showing up to advise, when I am showing up to train, I recognize that my being in those spaces, I'm responsible for the person who is on my level, the person who is above me and below me, because mentorship happens in all directions, right? And so if I don't understand that in being in community, that we will love on you and heal you and correct you and all these other things. But ultimately, my job is to then duplicate that as well. Miss Deb don't live in Tucson. We don't have the privilege of having her at the University of Arizona. But having been in community with Miss Deb, I know, me being myself, because I am encouraged to be myself, my full authentic self, I can then duplicate that community and then pull in the legacy, right? The lineage of Miss Deb through service, right? So we're not necessarily related to Miss Deb. That's not true, right? Because that's not even how our community works. We may not be blood tied to her, but because we've been in community, there have been seeds that are planted in us that we are then responsible for planting in other people, right? And so when we say community, I think it's such a buzzword now, but if we understood the responsibility of what that means, it also means that if I am walking around here thinking that I have to be the only one, that I have to be the only Dr. Allen, that no one can have ideas other than me, it requires me to step back and figure out, well, girl, what's going on with you? Because how is this adding to the community? But more importantly, when we say the community, it is this understanding that we are infinitely connected. So I'm both a part of, and I can stand outside of and talk about community, but then in the same time realize that I'm talking about myself.
Yep.
So if something is toxic and I'm a part of it, well, what role do you play in that, sis? What responsibility do you have to improve, right? I tell the story all the time about how Dr. Tam got me together really quick. And I tell it to my undergrad students to allow them to see that when I correct you, it's because I'm responsible for you, because I see part of me in you, because I can't just have you out here acting a fool and wilding out. And I tell the story of how Dr. Tam got me together real quick. Like, you need to sit here, not here. This is not how we do this. And that's important for people to hear. Like at any stage, you never get old enough to not be corrected.
That's it.
Never.
That's it.
I have to say, Dr. Allen, I love what you're saying, but I must tell you, when I'm navigating, especially predominantly white spaces, you know, I'm open to love, but I'm not going to lie, y'all. I don't come in expecting. I just don't. I've been in some of the most difficult white spaces you have ever seen. And I know you all have been there too, but I appreciate and I applaud you for that. And I think it was one of my protective mechanisms, you know, to be open to it, but don't be disappointed if it's not there.
Mm.
You know, be open to it, give it, but you may not be receiving it. So what I like to do when I go into those spaces, I go in going to respect you, and I'm going in demanding respect. And I will say that I go in demanding it. You know, I do. If you don't respect me, it's not like I'm going to just have this horrific attitude, but it is where it's going to cause me to say, okay, this is what this space is. So I have to go back to figuring out how do I now navigate that space now that I know the rules of engagement. I have to think about that, especially as a professional, a Black professional in this space, because there are times where I have had to be firm with people, extremely firm with people when I feel like I'm disrespected. I'm a strategic thinker, and you want me to be in this space to carry a Black voice when I thought this was strategic planning. You know, now when I'm coming into a DEI space or in the midst of the strategic planning, we're ensuring, all of us are ensuring that equity is one of the underlining pieces to this plan. Don't expect me to come in and be the only voice of equity, because I'm coming in to look at a strategic view as well, just like you. And I think I've been disrespected in those spaces, that I'm coming with some cultural agenda versus coming in to do the work of the university, of the space.
Right.
So I, you know, what is this meeting about? And I'm coming in to give my input. I want my input to be respected. You can ask me questions that may be around the lines of equity, but I also expect the same questions that you're asking others about the strategic pieces to what we're doing.
Exactly.
About the budgetary things that we're talking about the curriculum issues that we're talking about the building facilities issues that we're talking about. You know, I'm not just going to speak when it comes to something racial, something gender, or something gender and racial. And so I do. I come in here, you know, I don't expect to be loved, but if I get it, I'm happy. But I'm in here to do a job. I'm in here to respect and be respected. And so my sense of community at work is a little different from my sense of community at home. My sense of community at home and in my culture, I'm the crazy aunt. So, okay, I'm everybody's crazy aunt and all that kind of stuff. But my expectations at work is, I'm not glad to be here. I'm here. Equal parts. I'm here to sit at this table for us to respect each other, to carry out the duties that we have here. You know, because I've had people to tell me what my job is. You know, they're not my supervisor. You know, but it's what they want my job to be. And I've had to say, well, I appreciate you telling me that, but this is what my role is. And I enjoy this partnership because I'm coming in with a spirit of collaboration. I'm coming in with a sense of purpose, and that purpose is tied to our mission here at the university, or the place of work is tied there. But I am someone, if there's going to be some controversy, okay, I'm not going to fold. We're going to do it. We're going to do it in a civil way. And if not, there should be a procedure in place for me to get my point across in the way that you were treating me. And so I try to give that voice, you know, in there, because some people are very territorial, and then they see you and they wonder, who does she think she is? You know, who does she think she is? So I want that love. I'm open to that love, but I don't have to have it. I got that love at home. I got that love at other spaces, my sister circle and all this. I can be validated other places, but I'm gonna have some respect here. And then you're gonna be more comfortable for the person, a Black woman that comes in behind me. You're gonna be comfortable working with us. You don't worry about that. You're gonna ask the right questions of this person, and this is what's gonna happen. I'm gonna help you help yourself to be more equitable in these spaces.
There you go. And yeah, definitely. Um, and this is why in doing this DEI work, I often say, I just said it today, this work is not new. And Black women, we've been doing DEI work since the beginning of time, since we showed up uh, forcibly to have to be amongst the others. And so, little sister Amber, are you already having to step, you're how many years into your professional life?
Ooh, a handful. I don't know. If
Is it
I've
5
been in
or 6
research
years?
for 10
Is it
years.
how long?
And I've been in research for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, are you finding that you're having to make these demands when you step into your boardroom or the big laboratory? What's your experience with this?
I would say I feel like I've been flying under the radar enough where I haven't had those bigger experiences yet. But one thing I will say is I do find myself reaching out to my coworkers, especially the newer ones, and kind of acting as like, mother hen, making sure everybody's good, trying to help them navigate their careers. I've really kind of embraced that role in the past few months with this new position that I have. It's just kind of it's second nature to me now, just making sure everybody's okay. Are you taking care of yourself? One of my coworkers came by because she brought lunch, and she's like, look at her, like, she's so proud that she came up. She's like, look, I brought lunch. So it'll be interesting to see as I move up the ladder, if that just how those relationships will change. But I actually have a question, if it's all right with you, Dr. Lewis.
Sure.
So one of the things that I find, being in predominantly white spaces and coming across somebody else from the diaspora, is it's either locked eyes, I got you, or it's the complete opposite where there's only space for one and I'm going to be that one. And so I'm wondering, in order to make community, because there are so few of us, we need to, in my opinion, we need to come together and, support ourselves, especially in predominantly white communities. How do we kind of change that attitude?
I call that, what I call that? I call that the HNIC syndrome.
Yeah.
I call it the HNIC syndrome. And we, it is, you hit the nail on the head. It is there. It's very real. And, and when that trust level is not there, that was what all skin folk ain't your kinfolk.
Yeah.
When that is there, that intimidation where they want to be the one, where they want to be that voice and let them be the one that's doing it, it is very hard to navigate that. But one of the things that we have to remind ourselves, we are not monolithic. We come from so many subcultures. And when I had to understand that some of us are Afrocentric, some of us are conformist. I try to put them in those categories. Some of us are more culturated than others. Some of us are bicultural. Some of us are very traditionalist, just kind of glad to be here and not make waves. But when you understand that piece, you can put it in place. 'Cause I'm always asking, Lord, help me understand this. And when he does, I go, okay, that's that person. So for me, when I'm navigating that space, it's just that understanding that we are not monolithic, but how do we find those ways of how do we work together? Because I know that person has been probably through some racial battle fatigue, or maybe they're going through it, and this is the way they cope, and this is the way they feel validated, and this is the way they feel that they're a part of this. And so helping them along the way without taking anything from you, but helping them along the way, and you'll get that respect. It may take a long time. It may take a while, and sometimes that respect is not that they're going to be in your office and part of your circle and all of this. It's just that respect that they're going to understand you, and they'll start moving around. and gaining more respect, self-respect. Maybe not respect in those spaces, in those white spaces, but more self-respect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Miss
Yeah.
Deb, you in this circle have been the longest one in the professional or working world. What say you to that?
Yeah. You know, that is awfully hard to have people not acknowledge or recognize you, especially when you know that y'all are kind of in this thing together. Um, but you can't take it personally. You know, I try not to take it personally. It's like, I'm here if you need me. I'm going to keep reaching out to you. I'm going to keep sending you emails about this and emails about that and whatever else, you know, that I'm involved in, invite you, you know, to spaces that I'm a part of. And if you come, you come. If you don't, you don't. There's not, you know, there are no hard feelings, because you're, you know, she was right that they're dealing with their own stuff. Something
Mm-hmm,
has happened.
mm-hmm,
Something happened
mm-hmm,
that they weren't born like that, or their parents didn't teach them to do that. Um, so that may be a protective mechanism. I was in the store the other day and saw two young African American women, and they looked up and kind of saw me, and I could tell in their eyes they weren't sure. And I said, "Hey, ladies, how y'all doing?" You know, and then they just lit up, you know. And so I think that, you know, I try that, you know, try to reach out, you know, nod, you know, do that, you know, thing. And you can tell people get it, people, you know, don't. Another example, I was in the Ross with my son. This was about a year or two ago, a couple years ago. And we were walking through the store. This was before COVID. And there was a young black man that was coming down the aisle. And I watched the connection between the two of them. You know, it was the
mm-hmm,
subtle, you know, and they just kept on, but they acknowledged, it's like, I see you.
mm-hmm,
I'm validating you because I see you. And so even those people that don't want to be, they still need to be validated. We still need to do the, you know, the head thing. I see you. Um,
mm-hmm.
every day I see you. So whether or not you want to speak to me or not, I still see you, you know, so
I
that's
agree
what I
with
think.
I agree with Dr. Curtis and Dr. Allen that we need to be supportive, Amber. So I'm a member of an all-black dental hygiene organization, and all of us are professionals, and all of us have been educators. We've all been, you know, the H&IC, like Dr. Curtis mentioned. And so what I have found, is just to be supportive. Show that person support, because, like Miss Deb said, they may have gone through something, maybe currently going through something, and so we have to take that. Like Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. It's the same concept. It's like we need to say, you know what, I know my worth again, and I'm the better person here. And so I'm going to reach out to you, not only to give you the head nod, but say, good morning, how are you this morning, queen? You know, and show them that you're no threat to them, that you're trying to help them. You're trying to help them grow, you know? And so I think what I talked about earlier, we as Black folks have that crab in the basket mentality. Why is this person jealous of me? Why do you feel threatened by me? I'm here to help you succeed. I want to be where you are, or help you get where I am. And I think that if we have that collective mentality of we're here to help and support, again, going back to community, UNITY, all of us together as united together, then maybe you will have less and less people who will, you know, be less open to you coming into that space and sharing that space with them. If we're all brown, we are all trying to get to the same place at the same time. And I just find that we need to, those of us who are on this call and listening to this broadcast, we need to be open and be available to receive these other women in our circles, and then show that we're going to support them, help them, mentor them. Dr. Allen talked about mentorship, but there's also scholarship. So you can mentor someone, but then are you there to help them become scholars? Are you there to help support them? You know, there's mentorship, there's scholarship, and there's support systems. So if you combine all three for these women or men who of color who feel threatened, then eventually that wall will come down, like Dr. Curtis mentioned, Ms. Deb mentioned, that wall will come down. It may take some time, but that wall will come down. Thank you.
You know, I like this evening that we have Sister Amber here, because I think she's 10 years into her professional life, and I think this conversation has been very timely for her. And but I as we begin to close, so we're talking about this was a talk about our circles, correct? We as Black women holding these spaces. What do and so now, you know, when we go back to this DEI stuff and everybody wants to be supportive and get involved, and I want to show my stance on Black Lives Matter. What do we tell our European American colleagues? We have some European American friends, uh, acquaintances. What do we tell them about the sacredness of these circles, and how, or do we tell them, you know, we appreciate your support, but this circle is just for women who look like the women that I'm looking at right now in this studio? What do we say to that?
I'm sorry, Miss Deb, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna jump in there real quick and just say, you know, sometimes you don't get to be in my space, and I can say that nicely, you know, to you, because sometimes, you know, puppies need to be with puppies. You know, I mean, it just it is, and I'm not gonna apologize for it. It doesn't mean that you're less than, or you're not as, you know, whatever. Dr. Curtis and I have a mutual friend. You hear us talk about Frank all the time, you know, and he gets it. You know, he doesn't insert himself into places where he's not supposed to be, and he understands. But that's because we have taught him well, haven't we, Ramona? So we get to teach them, you know, that sometimes you're not going to be in this space, you know, and you're going to have to be okay with that, you know. Right. And so that's all that I have to say about that, is that sometimes you just don't get to be there, and, you know, hope you don't take it personally, but it's just kind of the way it is.
Exactly.
And I don't feel ashamed or bad about telling you that, you know, because sometimes it's just necessary. But, you know, I haven't had to do that too often.
And yeah, but I think now we are reaching a point where people are interested and curious, and, you know, and thinking, and, you know, they want to. We're talking about this inclusion, and people.
There's a time and place for everything. Yeah.
They want to show I'm supportive. You know, I support. I believe Black Lives Matter. It's important, and so, you know, they think there's no limit. You know, that okay, well then we're just going to include you in everything. And I think what we want to convey this evening is that we definitely need these spaces, and while we welcome the support and the love, this sacred space still has to remain just that for the people who look like us. And sometimes the men and the women come together in these sacred spaces, but we as women as Black women, as women of African descent, it still is very important to have these spaces. Dr. Treya, were you going to say something to this?
I was, and I don't. Can I say it this way? Here's what I wish that somebody would have told me when I started my career. You will not always be loved. You will not always be appreciated. Not everybody who looks like you is for you. Not everybody who has your same degree, who, you know, at 1 minute, one second they can say Black Lives Matter while still tearing down Black women, right? And so I don't want you to leave here without hearing me say that sometimes the hardest people for me to deal with, sometimes some of the people who have done me the most wrong look like me.
Mm.
And not only do they look like me, they are worse off for doing it. Like they put both of us in a bad situation.
Yeah.
So the example I always get is, I give is someone, a Black man stole my entire class syllabus, even the announcements, plagiarized it, and then and didn't even like decide to like clean up my contact information. In that moment, I had to decide, do I scorch the earth? Right? Because let's talk about the emotions that come with being betrayed. When we're looking for community, when you get run up on and done up on by someone who looks like you. And then let's talk about the times when we think we're in community and we are giving our all, and the individuals do not have the same understanding. In those moments, it becomes so very important for you to remember to tend to yourself, and this is what I mean by this, understand who you are and not internalize those things. Because once we start internalizing things, it becomes very easy. Even the most loving person can become toxic because of the pain that they are feeling. So the person who is like, your question before was like, what do you do when you're the person who's like, let's get together and do this, I want to help you, and that person is like, it can only be one. It never hurts us to show forth loving kindness. Never.
Absolutely.
And I can love you and fight for you and not be in community with you. So I don't want you to leave here thinking, I got to be in community with every person I see, every woman, every historically marginalized population. And I wish somebody would have told me that, so that the nights when I was like, I am sorrowful unto death because I just want to be in community with you, that you can still advocate for someone and find your spaces. I also wish that somebody would have told me that sometimes your community is not at work. It's outside of work. I show up, like Dr. Curtis says, I show up and I do a job. I show up and I do a job, and I show up and I advocate for the people that I'm supposed to advocate for. I show up and I minister to the students that I'm supposed to minister to. I hold the line as that is required. But I call Dr. Lewis, I'll call Dr. Tam. They don't work with me, right? But they have wisdom, right? So go where the wisdom flows freely. And that does not necessarily have to mean that it has to be at your job. I think Dr. Tam is going to get upset with me telling everyone, like, remember that one time you got on me? But go where the wisdom flows freely. No one should be making you jump through hoops to be your best person. And sometimes your community is going to be outside of your immediate place of being. That doesn't mean it doesn't get lonely. What it means is that sometimes those who say Black Lives Matter, those that say women in STEM matter, can be some of the most misogynistic, and they can be people who look like you. They can share the same gender. But that should not stop you for like showing forth and being grounded in yourself, right? And it shouldn't stop you from being who you are, because what someone thinks about you is really none of your business.
It's true.
And I
So
wish
was it
somebody would have told me
complication?
that.
Was it the Black convocation, Dr. Allen? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, but I think you got me together another time too.
Oh,
Like I've been to
God.
like a million Black convocations at
Oh,
NAU.
God.
All my degrees
But
are
it was
from
all
there.
in love. It was all in love.
Oh,
Yes,
goodness.
it is always in love. And so I always tell the story of, I remember the time, like nobody knew what it took to get there. Nobody knew what it took to get through that program, but to be hooded, right? To be stole by a Black woman who fixed my kente cloth. If you don't understand the significance of that, or who Dr. Okoli and Professor Sean, who were at my dissertation defense, and how you become engrafted more than just community, you become family, right? Afterwards. So I had mothers in scholarship, as Dr. Moore says. I had people who were willing to like say, no, you can't quit this program. There is work for you to do. And it's so great that you've already started to see that in other people, because these are the seeds that I'm talking about when I work with people Ms. Harris has worked with, and they say, oh, Deb Harris at NAU. And I'm like, I know her. That you get to experience, you are now starting to sow the seeds that we are attempting, hopefully, that we are attempting to sow into you tonight. And I wish somebody would have told me that my hurt feelings, those are like a fraction of your life. But the things that you plant into people, they come back every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time. So that's what I was going to say, but I wanted to frame it that way.
Beautiful.
Well, one of the things that I want to say here, Dr. Lewis, I want to answer that question about what things we need to let our white colleagues or what have you when we're in those white spaces. And then taking what Dr. Allen said about what I wish someone had told me. What I wish someone had told me was to tell them how to treat you, or show them how to treat you when they don't treat you right. You know, and I remember my mother used to say, I can show you better than I can teach you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and sometimes I step up the professional game in that. But what I want my white colleagues to know, when people of color step into the room, particularly Black men and women step into the room, lay down those assumptions. Put your assumptions to the side and those false notions of what race means to you in this space. And I mean, that's, if I don't do anything else in higher ed, the impact that I want to have is to tell white people, y'all need to be comfortable with us in this space now. I don't know what you heard. I don't know what someone told you, but all I want you to do is go ahead and be comfortable in this space. Don't fear me. Don't have assumptions about my credibility. Don't prejudge me in those ways. I am here. I'm part of this mission. I'm a collective piece to this picture, and I want you to treat me that way. But I also want Amber to know, Miss Jones, I want you to know, I put a couple of books in our private chat. The Chemical Dependency in the African American is the book where Peter Bell talks about those 6 subcultures of African Americans. It kind of helps you put things in perspective of, oh, okay, now I'm beginning to see ourselves as this broader group of people. But I also like Dr. Ron Walters, and these are books that have helped me navigate that HNIC syndrome. Is Dr. Ron Walters' book, African American Leadership, because he is going to break it down to you as to who's an African American leader and who's a leader who's African American. He's going to help you understand that, and from a historical perspective, help you understand that. And I've seen myself in both of those areas, you know, being an African American leader and a leader who's African American, you know. But I will tell us as a collective Black people, when we're in community, relax. Don't feel like you always have to carry the culture as a crutch. Carry the culture in you, not as a crutch on your shoulders. Carry it in you. Let it prop you up versus weigh you down in those white spaces. And so that, I mean, and I go back to what Ms. Harris said. Your white space and my black space is two different things. I know y'all think we're over here talking about white people. We're validating who we are. We're saying, girl, give me something to make it another day. Girl, help me do this. Help me. We're saying chill sometimes. We're saying relax. We're really helping each other get through some wellness things. Until we get more psychologists who understand our culture or who look like us, until we get more psychiatrists who understand, mental health therapists, substance abuse workers, until we get more doctors who understand us and what we go through, we need our circles.
Absolutely.
We need our circles. And so, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, and the healthy racial identity is key. And those of us who still have small children, let's start doing it. Because I remember I was 30 years old when I went over to my parents' house and finally took that white Jesus off that wall. He got to go now. I've been reading too much, Mom and Daddy. I've been reading too much. He got to go today.
Dr. Curtis, can I just add, there's a book, and it's not the whole book, but it's Beloved by Toni Morrison. And the specific chapter that I'm looking for, I see Dr. Tam shaking her head. Yep, she knows, is when Baby Suggs calls for the men. It's a circle, right? And it's very sacred. This passage, she says, call for the men and let I think the men weep. Or the men laugh, the children dance, the women weep, right? And I would say read this passage because it talks about the sacredness of our circles. Not everybody has to be, it's not sacred if it's an everybody thing. So to that question, you don't ever have to explain why are you hanging out with Ramona? You're not trying to support, you're trying to be nosy. And there's a difference, right? But that particular passage, I see everyone shaking their head, but it's Baby Suggs and what she's doing in this moment, and Black people recognize this, is she is giving space for people to occupy emotions, to be free, to do the things that they can't do within the context of the time period, right? Toni Morrison is such a very deep and leveled writer. Beloved should be taking everyone like 6 months to read through. But this one passage, when you ask this question, Dr. Lewis, that's what I thought of, was the sacredness of these spaces, allowing us to blossom in ways that outside of us are not tolerated and are treated as a threat. She allows us to take off our masks in those spaces. Women mourn, children come dance around your fathers. Men laugh, right? These things that were not historically allowed, because why would we ever? And in that space, it's a moment of resilience, right? We are going to celebrate us making it through, how we got over, but at the same time, we are going to open ourselves up to the fullness of who we are. And that in and of itself, I don't know if I can describe Toni Morrison any better than the collector of our culture and the preserver of our sacredness. That is Toni Morrison. So I would read that just as encouragement. Like I read that at least once or twice a month.
I like that. Dr. Tam, any closing words?
I have a very poor internet connection, but I think that Dr. Allen, Dr. Curtis, Ms. Harris, and soon to be Dr. Jones, I am manifesting it over there, Amber. I think that, yes, we want to manifest that. I think that collectively we have covered community, because you can't spell community without unity. And I think all of us on this call have demonstrated ways in which we navigate the spaces that in which we work, be it a PWI, be it, living in a white town, in my case, both Flagstaff. And I think that we have provided tools for all of us to use, whether be it individually or collectively. And I think that I agree with Ms. Deb. This is a sacred space. We have advocates, but I don't think the advocates can join this conversation because they won't understand. They can, to understand the man is to walk a mile in their shoes. They will never be able to understand what it's like to be in our brown skin, to walk into a building and to have all white faces look at you like you don't belong. And so I feel that what we've done today and what we continue to do is good work. And hopefully we've taken away some lessons learned, and we have relayed some lessons for some folks who don't know how to navigate those spaces. And hopefully we've been a beacon of hope and a beacon of light for them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and bless you all. Sister Deb had to leave to jump on to another Zoom this evening. We thank all of our viewers this evening for joining us in this kitchen table talk about uplifting and upholding the importance of community. And I don't know, I just feel like, and I'm so glad that Amber was here this evening, because it's like a love letter from all of the big sisters to our little sister. And so this, you know what, I just got to dedicate this live stream is dedicated to Amber this evening, because there was a lot said, Amber, that you may not need it now, but I would encourage you to stow it away in your heart, write it in your journal, because as you continue to grow and thrive as a young professional Black woman, a woman of African descent, you will need all of the words of wisdom that was shared on this broadcast, on this live stream this evening. And wow, I wish that more sisters at your point in life could see this, or even find this wisdom, these types of circles in their communities. And with that being said, LBE community, this is why we do what we do here, to bring these topics. This was very real. This is what we talk about in our sacred circles, and bless each and every one of you sisters here this evening, and our chiefess in her absence, that we allowed ourselves to open up and expose ourselves a little tonight, and because this was a sacred conversation that we put out, that we may enlighten, inform, and to educate. And so we thank each and every one of you for joining us. We went over this evening, and sometimes that's just what we have to do, especially when we talk about our sacredness, our godliness as the people that we are, that we were purposed to be, that somehow someone tried to tell us that we are not, but we are. And we do this because we are taking our place back at the table, so that we all can sit and dine and be together in what we call unity. So with that being said, thank you. Go and be blessed.